What would you do if your billionaire CEO said, "Beat me in chess and I'll marry you"? Most people would laugh and walk away. But when a quiet janitor accepted that challenge, the entire office thought it would be a joke. Until just 3 moves later, the CEO's smile vanished, the room went silent, and a secret from the janitor's past was revealed that no one saw coming. 3 moves, and she's mine. The words rolled off Victoria Ashton's tongue with the kind of self-assurance that only came from a lifetime of getting exactly what she wanted. Her voice carried across the gleaming top floor of Ashton Tech's headquarters, bouncing off marble floors and glass walls until every single person in the room froze mid-bite, mid-sentence, or mid-laugh. It was a Thursday afternoon, usually the slow crawl toward the weekend, but not today. Not with Victoria in one of her bold, unpredictable moods. She sat at the head of the massive oval table in the executive lounge, dressed in a crisp white suit that screamed authority. Her perfectly manicured nails tapped rhythmically on the mahogany surface, her lips curved in a smirk. Victoria Ashton wasn't just any CEO. She was the CEO, a self-made billionaire with a reputation for ruthlessness in the boardroom and elegance at every gala. People admired her, feared her, and in some cases, envied her. But more than anything, she loved competition. Whether it was business, poker, golf, or the annual charity marathon, she had to win. Losing was not in her vocabulary. And today, the competition was chess. It had started innocently enough, during a casual post-lunch chat with her senior executives. A few of them had been discussing hobbies, when Richard from accounting mentioned he'd joined the company's chess club. That got a laugh out of the group, and someone joked that no one in the building could ever beat Victoria at the game. The comment was met with nods and chuckles because, well, it was true. Victoria had been a chess prodigy in college. She had trophies on her office shelf to prove it. Even now, she could dismantle experienced players without breaking a sweat. To her, chess wasn't just a game, it was a metaphor for life. Strategy, patience, and ruthless precision. "That's right," she said with a smug tilt of her chin. "No one here could beat me. Not the club, not the IT department, not even Richard, who probably thinks he's the next Bobby Fischer." The room erupted in laughter, Richard included. And then, with that spark of mischief in her eyes, she leaned forward and made the offer. "Beat me in chess, and I'll marry you." The executives laughed again, this time louder. They thought it was just Victoria being her dramatic self. After all, who would be foolish enough to take that bet seriously? Everyone laughed, except one man. By the corner of the room, partially hidden behind a tall potted plant, stood Samuel Harris. He was the janitor, quietly doing his afternoon rounds. The gray in his short-cropped hair and the faint lines on his face told the story of a man who'd seen life's ups and downs. His work uniform was neatly pressed, and his posture was upright, not slouched or timid like some might expect. He didn't speak much. In fact, most people on the top floor barely noticed him unless they needed a spill cleaned or a trash bin emptied. But in that moment, Samuel put down his mop. He stepped forward, just far enough for everyone to notice him, and said in a voice calm but firm, "I'll take that challenge, ma'am." The room fell silent. Forks hovered in midair. Coffee mugs stopped halfway to mouths. The laughter evaporated, replaced by a collective gasp. Victoria blinked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. "You'll what?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "I'll play you," Samuel said, meeting her gaze without flinching. A murmur spread through the room. The idea was absurd. A janitor challenging the CEO to chess? It sounded like the setup to a bad joke. Richard from accounting smirked. "You play chess, Sam?" Samuel didn't answer Richard. His eyes never left Victoria's. The executives exchanged amused, almost pitying glances. They could already see how this was going to play out. A few of them were grinning, imagining the humiliation Samuel was about to walk into. This was going to be quick, and it wasn't going to be pretty. Victoria leaned back in her chair, studying him like a cat watching a mouse step into the open. "You realize, Mr. Harris," she said slowly, "that I don't play for fun. I play to win." Samuel gave the faintest of smiles. "So do I, ma'am." The boldness in his tone caught a few people off guard. For a moment, Victoria considered brushing it off, dismissing the whole thing with a laugh. But there was something in Samuel's expression, something steady, unshaken. It wasn't arrogance, but quiet confidence. And that made her curious. "All right then," she said finally. "After hours. My office. Let's see what you've got." And just like that, the game was set. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast long golden beams across the skyline, but inside Ashton Tech, an entirely different kind of heat was building. Whispers spread through the hallways. Employees from every department leaned over cubicle walls, sharing the news. The CEO had challenged the janitor, or was it the other way around? To a chess match. By the end of the workday, half the office was buzzing with anticipation. They weren't just waiting to see a game of chess. They were waiting to see a battle of pride, and maybe, just maybe, an upset no one could have predicted. By the time the clock struck 6, Victoria Ashton's office looked less like a workplace and more like a stage. The mahogany desk had been cleared, replaced with a polished wooden chessboard. The soft hum of the city outside was drowned out by the murmurs of employees gathering just beyond the glass walls. Some leaned against the doorframe, others crouched by the corners, phones at the ready. The challenge had spread like wildfire through Ashton Tech. The CEO versus the janitor, it was the kind of story that didn't happen in real life, only in movies. People were betting candy bars, lunch money, and in one case, a week's worth of coffee on the outcome. Victoria sat in her leather chair, posture perfect, her tailored white suit as crisp as it had been that morning. She rested her hands on the table, the faintest of smirks on her lips. Her hair, pinned back elegantly, caught the last rays of the setting sun. She looked like a queen about to defend her throne. Across from her sat Samuel Harris, still in his navy blue janitor's uniform. He hadn't changed clothes, hadn't combed his hair for the occasion, and hadn't even taken off his work ID badge. The only concession to the match was the way he rolled up his sleeves, revealing steady, capable hands, the kind of hands that looked like they'd done real work, not just signed papers. "Are you ready?" Victoria asked, her tone playful but edged with challenge. Samuel gave a slow nod. "Always." She made the first move a pawn to F3. A small, seemingly harmless opening. She tapped the piece into place, then looked up with a confident glint. Samuel didn't rush. He studied the board as if every square was a world of possibilities. His hand hovered briefly before moving his pawn to E5, claiming the center of the board with quiet authority. From outside, a few onlookers exchanged whispers. "That's a bold first move." "Yeah, but she's the CEO, she's got this." Victoria countered quickly, moving her pawn to G4. A grin touched her lips. She was setting up for an aggressive attack, certain Samuel would have to defend himself soon. But Samuel didn't flinch. He reached for his queen and, with a smooth, deliberate motion, slid it to H4. Checkmate. For a heartbeat, no one understood what had happened. The room was utterly still, except for the faint ticking of the wall clock. Then, as if on cue, gasps erupted from the crowd. Someone dropped their phone in shock. "Wait, what?" one employee blurted. "That's fool's mate," another whispered, half in disbelief, half in awe. It was the fastest checkmate in chess, a trap so simple that experienced players rarely fell for it. Yet here it was, played out in front of the entire top floor. Victoria stared at the board, her eyes darting from her vulnerable king to Samuel's queen. Her smirk was gone. Her hands, which had rested so gracefully before, were now stiff on the table. She inhaled sharply, her expression shifting from confusion to realization, to something else entirely, a mix of embarrassment and grudging respect. 3 moves. That's all it had taken. Samuel, on the other hand, showed no sign of triumph. He didn't gloat, didn't smirk. Instead, he simply placed his hands on his knees, nodded respectfully to her, and began to stand. "How?" Victoria's voice was softer now, almost a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might shatter the fragile pride still holding her together. Samuel paused, resting his hand lightly on the back of the chair. "My grandfather taught me to play when I was 6, he said, his voice steady and calm. "I competed in national tournaments in my youth, but life had other plans." The crowd murmured. Some exchanged looks of disbelief, others smiled in quiet admiration. They had seen him mop floors, empty trash bins, and polish brass rails. But no one had imagined this. Victoria leaned back, still absorbing the shock. Her pride had taken a blow, but beneath it, something else stirred curiosity. She had underestimated him, and in her world, underestimating an opponent was the deadliest mistake you could make. Samuel gave a small nod to her, then stepped away from the desk. He didn't wait for applause and didn't seek the cameras recording from behind the glass. To him, it had been just another game, another moment in a long life full of quiet victories no one ever saw. As he walked toward the door, someone from the crowd muttered, "That was legendary." Another whispered, "3 moves. I still can't believe it." Victoria sat there for a long moment after he left, staring at the board. Her king was trapped, her pride dented, and somewhere deep inside, a new respect was forming for the man she had thought was just a janitor. And outside, the story of the fastest checkmate in Ashton tech history was already making its way through every hallway, every text message thread, and before long, every corner of the internet. By the next morning, the match between Victoria Ashton and Samuel Harris had become the only topic of conversation at Ashton Tech. In the elevators, in the cafeteria line, even in the hushed corners of the break room, people were whispering about the janitor who had taken down the CEO in just 3 moves. Phones buzzed with replay clips of the match. Some watched in disbelief, rewinding over and over to see exactly where Victoria had gone wrong. Others just stared at Samuel's calm, unshaken expression as he slid his queen into place. But the burning question on everyone's mind was the same. Who exactly was this man? By mid-morning, the more curious employees had already started digging. A few typed his name into search engines. Others called friends in local chess circles. It didn't take long for the pieces of Samuel Harris's past to come together, and what they found left the entire office stunned. Years ago, long before he ever set foot in Ashton Tech, Samuel Harris had been a name to watch in the chess world. As a teenager, he dominated state championships, earning trophies taller than himself. He had traveled with his school's chess team to international tournaments, representing his country with quiet pride. Commentators at the time had called him a rising star, someone who could very well join the elite ranks of the grandmasters one day. But his promising career had been interrupted in the most unexpected and cruel way. At the height of his success, Samuel's mother was diagnosed with a serious illness. The treatments were expensive, and his family didn't have the means to afford them without making sacrifices. Samuel didn't hesitate. He withdrew from competitive chess, turned down invitations to prestigious tournaments, and took whatever work he could find to help pay for her care. First it was part-time jobs, stocking shelves, delivering newspapers. Then it was full-time labor, construction, warehouse shifts, night cleaning. The glamorous life of chess trophies and televised matches was replaced with the reality of long hours, aching muscles, and bills that never seemed to end. Through it all, he never stopped playing. Not on grand stages, but in quiet moments, a game with an old friend at the park, a puzzle solved late at night at the kitchen table. His skills never faded. If anything, they sharpened in their own way, honed by years of patience, sacrifice, and perspective. By lunchtime, nearly everyone in the building knew his story. And with that knowledge came a shift in how people saw him. The same employees who had walked past him without so much as a glance were now stopping to say hello. Those who had thought of him as just the janitor now approached him with questions about chess openings, strategy, and even life advice. Some came to challenge him to a friendly game, expecting maybe a fighting chance. But each time, Samuel's pieces moved with the precision of someone who saw the board 10 moves ahead. Pawns fell, queens were trapped, and in the end, every single challenger left the table shaking their head in disbelief, often smiling despite their loss. Even people who had never cared about chess suddenly wanted to learn. Samuel became an unofficial mentor, showing interns how to plan attacks, teaching department heads the importance of patience, and gently reminding everyone that a flashy move meant nothing without a solid foundation. It wasn't just his skill that drew people to him, it was his demeanor. He never bragged about his past, never used his story to make others feel small. When someone praised him for his talent, he would smile and simply say, "It's just a game." But every game teaches you something about life. In a world where titles and job descriptions often defined a person's worth, Samuel Harris had reminded the entire building of something far more important. True skill and character can't be measured by a nameplate on an office door. And somewhere, in the glass-walled corner office overlooking the city, Victoria Ashton herself was starting to see Samuel in a different light. The sting of her loss still lingered, But beneath it was a growing curiosity, and a spark of an idea she couldn't quite ignore. Victoria Ashton had been many things in her career: relentless, strategic, unapologetically competitive, but she had never been a sore loser. Losing was rare for her, and when it happened, she didn't pretend it hadn't. She learned from it, and she never forgot who had bested her. Still, the sting from the night before was sharp. She'd been outplayed in 3 moves, and not by some corporate rival or professional grandmaster, but by the quiet janitor she'd walked past for years without a second thought. When she woke the next morning, her first instinct had been to push the memory aside. But the video of the match, now circulating on nearly every employee's phone, made that impossible. Each time she saw Samuel's calm, calculating expression, she felt something beyond embarrassment: respect. So, when she arrived at the office, she asked her assistant to send Samuel to her office as soon as he's free. A half-hour later, the door opened and Samuel stepped in. His uniform was as neat as always, and he carried himself with the same calm presence he'd had the day before. He looked neither intimidated nor overconfident. "You wanted to see me, ma'am?" he asked politely. Victoria gestured toward the chair opposite her desk. "Yes. Have a seat." He did, folding his hands in his lap. "I made a promise yesterday," she began, "and I'm not going to back out. But," she gave a small, knowing smile, "I have a feeling you're not interested in marrying me." Samuel's lips curved into a small chuckle. "You're right, ma'am. I'm happily married already. 26 years this summer." "That explains the calm under pressure," she teased lightly. For the first time that morning, both of them laughed. The tension in the room eased, and Victoria leaned forward. "Then how about we make a different deal?" she said. "I want you to become the official coach for the company's chess club." Samuel blinked, surprised. "Coach?" "Yes. Organize tournaments, teach strategy sessions, mentor anyone who wants to learn. Chess is about focus, patience, and thinking ahead, exactly the kind of mindset I want my employees to develop." She paused, her eyes locking with his. "And I can't think of anyone better to teach them than you." Samuel hesitated, not out of reluctance, but out of humility. "That's a generous offer, ma'am. But I'm just the janitor here." Victoria shook her head. "No, Samuel. You're not just anything. Yesterday proved that. You showed me, and everyone else, that leadership and skill don't always wear a suit and tie. And frankly, this company needs more of what you have." She reached for a folder on her desk and slid it toward him. Inside was a letter offering him a promotion, not as a favor, but as a recognition of his potential. The position: Manager of Employee Engagement, with a salary that would triple his current income. His duties would include running the chess program, mentoring staff, and helping improve morale and team building across departments. Samuel's eyes widened. "This is a big step up." Victoria smiled. "So was checkmating me in 3 moves. Consider it a reward for keeping me humble." By lunchtime, the news was official. An announcement went out in the company newsletter, complete with a picture of Samuel at the chessboard. But it wasn't just about his new role, it was a message from the CEO herself. Never underestimate someone because of their job title. Talent can hide in the most unexpected places. Yesterday, I was reminded that leadership, skill, and brilliance aren't limited to those at the top. Sometimes, they're mopping the floor right beside you. The response from employees was overwhelming. Congratulatory emails flooded Samuel's inbox. People stopped him in the hall to shake his hand. Even those who had never touched a chess piece before were suddenly eager to join the club. Samuel accepted it all with quiet grace. He wasn't in it for the recognition, but he understood the power of the moment. If his story could inspire someone else to keep honing their skills, to stay ready for the opportunity that might come without warning, then it was worth every second. Later that day, as Victoria passed the break room, she spotted Samuel teaching 2 interns the basics of chess. He was explaining the importance of protecting the king, his voice patient and steady. Both young men were hanging on every word. She smiled to herself. She had gained far more than she'd lost in that match. And though she never said it out loud, Victoria had already set a private goal. One day, she would beat Samuel Harris at chess. But until then, she was perfectly fine being his most dedicated student. It started with a single shaky phone video, filmed through the glass walls of Victoria Ashton's office. The clip showed the CEO of Ashton Tech, all elegance and confidence, sitting across from the company's janitor. It captured her opening moves, her smirk, and then, the exact moment Samuel Harris slid his queen forward, declaring checkmate in just 3 moves. The camera zoomed in on her stunned face, the kind of reaction you couldn't fake. Within seconds, the clip cut to the janitor's calm nod as he stood, the very picture of quiet dignity. Someone uploaded it to the company's internal chat as a joke. But jokes have a way of escaping. Within hours, it was on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. By morning, it had racked up millions of views. The internet had opinions. Some comments were playful. CEO got promoted to humble real quick. 3 moves. That's gotta be a world record for corporate revenge. Others were deeply respectful. This is the best reminder that titles don't define intelligence. Protect this man at all costs. Chess enthusiasts broke down the game frame by frame, explaining how rare Fool's Mate was in competitive play and how skillfully Samuel had capitalized on Victoria's overconfidence. Memes flooded in, Samuel's face photoshopped onto famous chess champions, or onto movie posters with titles like The Janitor's Gambit. The more people learned about Samuel's backstory, his near rise to the Grandmaster circuit, the sacrifices he'd made for family, his quiet mastery of the game, the more the internet fell in love with him. It didn't take long for mainstream news outlets to catch wind. Headlines popped up. Janitor checkmates CEO in 3 moves, and wins the internet. From mop to master, the inspiring story of Samuel Harris. Morning shows invited him for interviews. Podcasters wanted to hear his life lessons. A popular chess YouTuber even did a deep dive analysis of his strategy, calling him the kind of player who sees the whole board in his mind before the first piece moves. Samuel, ever humble, didn't let the sudden fame change him. When he was asked about the match in interviews, he always answered the same way. It wasn't about beating the CEO. It was about playing the best game I could, and maybe reminding people that skill can be hiding anywhere. The invitations didn't stop there. Local schools reached out, asking him to speak to students about perseverance and following your passions, even when life throws obstacles in your way. At one high school auditorium, he stood before a crowd of teenagers and told them about the day he put away his chess trophies to work 3 jobs and care for his sick mother. Life doesn't always move in a straight line, he told them. But that doesn't mean you stop playing the game. You just find a new way to win. The students gave him a standing ovation. Back at Ashton Tech, Samuel's role had changed forever. Now the manager of employee engagement, he ran weekly chess sessions in the break room. Every Wednesday at lunch, employees gathered around the board, trying their luck. And without fail, one figure always showed up, Victoria Ashton herself. She no longer made outrageous bets, but she was still fiercely competitive. Every week, she sat down across from Samuel, determined to be the first in the building to beat him. And every week, she lost, sometimes in 20 moves, sometimes in 10. But each time, she left the table smiling. Someday, she would say, pointing a finger at him like a friendly warning, I'm going to win. Samuel would just chuckle. I'll be ready, ma'am. Over time, the story of that 3-move checkmate became company legend. New hires heard about it on their first day. Visitors spotted the framed photo in the lobby, a still image of Samuel making the winning move, with a plaque beneath it reading, "Never judge someone by their uniform. You might be looking at a quiet genius." It wasn't just a reminder of one incredible game. It was a lesson about humility, respect, and the hidden talents that walk past us every day. And while the internet eventually moved on to other viral stories, within the walls of Ashton Tech, Samuel Harris remained a living legend, proof that sometimes the most extraordinary victories happen in the most ordinary places. And that's the incredible true story of the janitor who checkmated a CEO in just 3 moves. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button, it really helps the channel grow, and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring, jaw-dropping stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.